I'm here to talk about animal abuse. I really believe that one of the most basic human obligations is not only to take care of each other, but then to take care of those that are less fortunate than us, and then to take care of the animals. And I'm about to talk to you about what I think is animal neglect or abuse on steroids, because the person that did the animal neglecting was a veterinarian, one that went to school, took an oath to look out for and make the life of animals better, and in fact she did just the antithesis. Today I'm going to talk to you about Dr. Gail Nichols. Let me introduce you to her. She is 66 years old. She's a Florida licensed doctor in veterinarian medicine. She works part-time at the Gulfport Veterinarian Hospital, and she's also called a fill-in at the Pasco Emergency Animal Clinic in Port Richey. She at one time, prior to us taking over the duties and responsibilities of animal control, was apparently a part-time veterinarian for Polk County Animal Control. She has a criminal history all the way back to 1974, where she was arrested for possession of marijuana. We arrested her in, I think it was 2005, for abuse of a handicapped person. She was disciplined by the veterinarian board in 2016, and there's no information on the website other than the fact that she was disciplined. Her husband, who we found to be very reasonable and rational, unlike his wife, Paul, is a retired senior engineering program manager for the U.S. federal government. He was very cooperative. He was a gentleman. She was absolutely obstinate and hard to get along with. Our animal control team went there on an anonymous complaint of neglect and abuse of animals. When we arrived, we first talked to Dr. Nichols' husband, Paul Smith, and as we looked around, we could see animals that were certainly, without a doubt, neglected. The doctor came up. We asked if they would sign a waiver to allow us to continue to look in the residence and around the residence, and she denied it. Didn't want to cooperate. We go, no problem. So we went and got a search warrant. We came back, we learned that Dr. Nichols lives in one camper, her husband lives in another camper, and the animals live in the house. I can only describe this house to you by how horrible it was. Cages, clutter, no air conditioning, rats running every place, rat nest in the air conditioning vents. The smell of the ammonia smell of urine was overwhelming. It was an absolute mess. We found on this piece of property that's about 2 acres, 28 miniature horses. The 28 miniature horses are used for breeding. They sell the miniature horses as pets. There was a group of the horses in one pen behind the house, another group in pens in front of the house, with the stud horses running with them. And for those of you who are familiar with the process, you can't control or manage your breeding process, so there's certainly the opportunity for crossbreeding, interbreeding, and it was just a disaster. We also saw 8 dogs. 5 of them were housed without water inside this house without air conditioning. They said that there was one fan there, but the conditions were absolutely horrific. Certainly it was not inhabitable for human beings, and it certainly wasn't inhabitable for the animals that had to be there. We also saw 2 parrots, 2 birds. The birds had picked a lot of the feathers from their body, and certainly they do that under stress. Quite frankly, when we looked at this, it was such a train wreck, such a disaster. The only thing we didn't see was a monkey wearing a top hat lassoing the rats. It was terrible. So we went through this rat-infested house. We rescued the 28 miniature horses. We rescued 2 full-size horses, 8 dogs, and 2 birds. Of the miniature horses that we rescued, we had to euthanize 3 of them because of their unbelievably difficult medical circumstances, which caused horrific pain. I asked one of my animal control my agriculture investigators who are specialists, on a scale of 1 to 10, what was the pain? And she said, oh, a 10. She said, we had one of the horses that was in such bad shape, the bone in the foot had disintegrated. She said it would be like your foot being gone and you trying to walk on the nub of your leg. We saw horses that their hooves had grown out so much that they had an elf-like appearance, and you can see the pictures here. So we found some of the horses were just simply dirty, matted, and not physically in significantly bad shape, but we found 5 of them that ultimately we had to euthanize 3, and 2 of them with significant medical care we hope and pray will recover. The dogs had all kinds of medical issues, and they weren't being appropriately fed. Some of them looked all right. Folks, this is like deja vu. It seems like every time we go to one of these events, we see evidence of hoarding. We see some animals that seem to be okay. I don't know if they're just the fittest of the bunch and can overwhelm the others. But we see the mangled hair, the dirty, the filthy, the overgrown hooves. One of the horses, the miniature horses we were forced to euthanize, actually had wire wrapped around the hoof. And the skin and actually the tissue had grown over that to where it cut off the blood flow. I think we have a photograph of the Xray, and the horse was totally lame. All of them needed some kind of care and attention. My agriculture specialist said, you know, Sheriff, a farrier is between $25 and $35. And all of these conditions, had they been addressed as they should have, it wasn't a big ticket item, but they ignored it. We found that They were fed hay, but for all intents and purposes, there was no grass at all. It was a dirt lot. We saw horses, miniature horses as young as 8 months that had never had any attention. We saw horses that were as old as 3 years old. We put them in jail yesterday afternoon, charged with 3 counts of felony animal cruelty, 1 count of misdemeanor animal cruelty, and 5 counts of confinement without appropriate water, food, or other necessities. It's interesting why we were there with a search warrant. Paul looked at Gail, his wife, Dr. Nichols, and said, well, I guess you're going to miss your nail appointment today. So she could afford to go to the doctor to have her fingernails and toenails taken care of. But she left these animals in very difficult situations. And the pain that some of them were in really borders on indescribable. So, as human beings, we have an ethical obligation to ourselves, to each other, and certainly to those less fortunate. And right behind that, we have an ethical obligation to look out for the animals who have no say-so in where they live. They have no say-so in how they're taken care of. But my promise to the people of this community is that we're going to look out for the animals. So if you have an animal in need of services, in need of help, in need of medical condition, do yourself a favor. Take them to the veterinarian, get them help, make sure they're appropriately taken care of before my folks hear about it and come to your front door. So here's your warning, and here's your sign. Take care of your animals. And we'll help coach and teach and get you there. But if you neglect and abuse these animals, we'll be after you. That's just a promise. Any questions?
Sheriff, the husband said on the phone today it's a complicated story and he can't wait to tell their side of the story. Is there any other side to the story?
Well, do you know, I wish that we could listen to the miniature horses and hear their side of the story. But the visuals, I think, say it all. And the bottom line to it is she's a veterinarian. She knows better, or should know better. She certainly had the ability, if those horses were sick, were injured, to appropriately take care of them, and she knows how, and she didn't. So if they wanted to tell their side of the story, they had a classic opportunity today to tell y'all. And they can start telling it, because we want to hear it, because they're not talking to us. But if I abused and neglected horses, I don't guess I'd talk to you either. Yes, sir.
There's a house. They're not living in the house. The animals are living in the house, and they're living in these outbuildings or trailers.
That's right.
Is that because the conditions were so bad?
It was totally impossible for them to live in that house. It was such horrible conditions. But yet they caged 5 dogs and put them in that house. And they had rats running every place. It was just unbelievable. Just unbelievable. And you add on top of that, she's a veterinarian. She knows better. And we helped her understand that and clear up any misconceptions she had with her arrest. Anything else?
They want the animals back.
They do. That doesn't surprise me at all. But they won't get them back unless a court rules that they can have them back, because we see horrible neglect, horrible abuse. And I ask you, if you were one of the animals, would you want to go back there? It's our job to be an advocate for the animals. And that's what we're doing. We're advocating for the animals.
How often do you see this type of abuse?
We don't see it to this level very often. We do see hoarding cases. We do see cases where people are overrun. Usually we're dealing with small animals, such as usually cats, occasionally dogs, but it's rare that we see larger animals in this circumstance. But I can tell you this, we're their advocates when nobody else will be their advocates. And if they want to fight in court, that's what we hire lawyers for.
I'm sure it's even, you don't see veterinarians.
I have never, ever, ever seen a veterinarian that allowed this to happen before in my work career. And it shocks you. I mean, you expect the veterinarians to be the one to call this to your attention. You expect the veterinarians to be the one to go, time out, you can't treat your animals like this. And while she's at these clinics part-time working, taking care of other people's animals, ostensibly, I hope she was, she's allowing her animals to live like this. That's appalling.
How do you even explain that?
You can't explain it. You absolutely can't explain it. She knew if these horses were injured, the appropriate medical process is to euthanize them. But she didn't. She let them stay there through all the pain and suffering and limping around. There was one horse that was in such pain. Normally horses stand. But this horse was laying down just because it could not stand the pain when it was standing up. So it would get up and lay down and get up and lay down. And to me, nothing's worse than pain. Physical pain and then emotional pain. And when you are treating animals like this physically, you're also treating them like that emotionally.
Sure, I'm not quite sure how to ask this, but I'm going to give it a try anyway. You know, for somebody who, I don't want to speculate too much, but when you see, just in general in your investigations, whether it has to do with animals or humans, a hoarding, potentially, situation, do you have any way to, like, maybe try to rehabilitate people in general and in the jail system? Can you talk about that a little bit? I
Yeah.
don't know that this applies to this case
Sure.
for sure, but...
When we book people into the jail, we're a short-term solution usually to long-term problems. So the average turnover at the county jail is going to be 28 days. We don't have people there long enough to make any difference. But we can refer them for help. We go out into the community, our animal control folks, our agriculture investigators and specialists, and we coach and teach and help people who don't know what to do or get jammed up all the time. So we don't go out there and go, aha, your horse is 25 pounds underweight, you're charged criminally. Aha, your horse's hooves need trimming, so we're going to charge you criminally. We go out and coach and teach what to do. Only in clear neglect and abuse cases do we bring charges. And when you see this, and when the community sees this, it is clear to me that this is neglect and abuse. And should they want to tell their side of the story to a jury, we can't hardly wait. Thank you all very much.